Hello everyone and welcome back to where we sometimes talk about thrillers on Thursdays, and today I'm very excited to review first a book that you all had highly recommended to me, and that is The Push, and then I'll be reviewing what's been one of the most anticipated mystery thriller releases of 2022 that I just finished, which is The Maid. I do have a couple tiny, they're not big, channel updates, and I love hearing other booktubers talk about these types of things, but if you have zero interest, I get it, so I will have timestamps if you want to go ahead and go straight to the reviews, which will be spoiler free as always. So for those of you who have been following my channel for a long time, you will know The Branch. And I made the branch, I drew it, I took pictures of those books from my high school bookshelf and cropped them and put them on the branch. It took many hours to make, as simple as it looked. And if you follow me on Twitter, you will know what I'm about to say maybe, but I was walking through TJ Maxx and then I saw something and it just changed my perspective on how I viewed that forever. And I realized that the branch, the text, it looked like a Ray Dunn mug, especially the text. And ever since then, anytime it was at the beginning of my video, anytime I looked at my channel, I looked at the background on my Twitter, I couldn't take it. And so I just wanted to say, let's say a little goodbye to the branch, let's sunset it. I know that seems like an irrational reason to change it, but I think honestly, at the end of the day, beyond that, I've just gotten a little bit sick of it. You know, it was in place for many, many years. Sometimes you just need a little bit of a refresh. So when I was trying to think of a new background to make, and I was thinking that I'm a 90s baby. This is a channel mainly about horror and thrillers. Purple and green are two of my favorite colors, and I was kind of going for a 90s Nickelodeon Goosebumps type vibe. So this is the new channel logo. Hope you all enjoy it. Just again, maybe no one cares, but I love hearing other booktubers talk about these kind of updates. I also am now filming in 4K. I hope that it looks better. Please let me know if you see a difference or not. Okay, enough about that. Let's go ahead and first get into a review of The Push. So The Push by Ashley Audrain came out last year, and I had somehow never heard of this. Even though it was apparently so widely popular. I didn't hear about it until so many of you left comments in my 2021 favorites video saying that this one was one of your favorite books of 2021. But our protagonist is Blythe Connor, and she is determined to be a warm and caring mother, especially because that it was not the experience with her own mother, who is very cold and overall just a horrific mother to her. So the book chronicles Blythe and her husband meeting in college, them deciding to have their first baby together. They end up having two. And unfortunately for Blythe, even though she's determined to be a great mother, she immediately doesn't feel that connection with her daughter Violet that she expects to, and starts to feel that something is maybe a little bit off. And of course that gets into this being a thriller, and her husband Fox, does not believe her at all. And then she has a second child named Sam, a baby who she does feel very connected to. So now let's go ahead, as always, and shift first into the prose. First, I can see why this was so hugely popular, because I don't think that we get enough thriller books or horror novels, even though this isn't horror, it's more of a thriller. We just don't get enough books centered around the topic of motherhood. Of course, there is a good chunk, but when you think about it in comparison to, say, all of the thrillers that come out about, a grizzled female detective or a woman who's being stalked in her home, when you picture that satire that just came out that I'm currently in the middle of right now, I forget what it's called. But I think it's unfortunate, and even I'm guilty of what I'm about to say. I found myself constantly for the first 75% of this book really comparing it to, say, for example, We Need to Talk About Kevin, which I've also read, and I love that book as well. And it does seem to touch on some of the same, a little bit of the same storyline, but the gender of the children is just reversed in terms of ages and who the mother feels disconnected with. But then I found myself just really angry at myself and kicking myself for constantly thinking of that comparison, when I think about the fact that I don't do that with all of the other, as I said, thriller books and movies and TV shows that do seem to be the same storyline over and over again, right? We'll watch 100 TV shows about a grizzled female detective, but we can't take a few books about motherhood that might be traumatic without comparing it to this one other book on the topic. So that's a little bit of my rant there. But one of my favorite pieces about this book was how it really got at the idea of generational trauma and motherhood. There's this imagery at the beginning of the book that I can't stop thinking about, which is the idea that not technically, but in a little bit of a way, we were almost inside of our grandmothers, right? Because we were inside of our mothers, right? The eggs were in there. I understand technically that's not us, you know what I'm saying? But that sort of imagery the author gives at the beginning of the book, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And she's sort of using it as a metaphor to think about the things we learn from our own mother and what did they learn from their mothers. And I thought that whole piece was really, really interesting throughout the book and well done, especially when you're learning back about the generations, a couple generations of women on Blythe's side of the family. And I also thought she did a really great job getting at the idea of sort of the expectations of motherhood and what it should look like, how they should act, how they should feel towards their children. And I was watching an interview with the author on YouTube, and she was saying sort of her inspiration behind a lot of this was the idea that the concept of what a woman needs to look like, act, be, has luckily changed a lot over, say, the past years. But unfortunately, the image of what a mother should look like and behave and act and feel has not changed. And so she's getting a lot at this idea of if you're a new mother and you're feeling that you're not meeting those expectations in terms of what you're doing, saying, or the emotions that you have towards your children. So that was everything I loved about the book. Now let's go ahead and shift into the cons. First, I don't know, and I'm going to tread carefully when I'm talking about this, but I really don't think I'm giving anything away by saying this. If you've even read just one tiny blurb about the book. When this book was marketed, the impression I got was that there'd be a little bit of a push and pull where maybe you would be thinking, is Blythe just losing it? Is she imagining it because of what she went through? Or is her daughter Violet actually evil? And when you're reading the book, I won't say which side it lands on, but all I'll say is like from the get-go, I think it's obvious what the author is saying the case is, and I didn't feel any of that tension one way or the other. And I think it could have been interesting if there had been a little bit more of that wonder about what was occurring. That wasn't a huge gripe for me, but the one that was a really big con was the last just 2 lines of this book. The final thing that happens, I thought felt a little bit cheap, and it made it almost feel like the ending of like a Lifetime movie, when I thought the rest of the book, 99.9% of it, I thought was so smart and well done. I got a comment saying that when I rate a book, I should not say the number of creepy candles it's going to get out of 5, and instead first let you all see so there's a little bit more tension. And I thought that was a really good idea. So without further ado, I gave the push 4 out of 5 creepy candles. Okay, now let's go ahead and review the Maid by Nita Prose. This book is everywhere. If you look at most anticipated books of 2022, new releases, this book is it has a huge amount of marketing behind it. And I think with that comes all of the hype. This has been on a lot of people's most anticipated books of 2022. It came out just a few weeks ago, and of course I just finished it. So for a quick summary, our protagonist is Molly the maid, and she is 25 years old, works at the Regency Hotel, just adores and loves her job, loves being a maid. She definitely wants things to be kind of just so, and takes things other people say quite literally. And her life is turned upside down when, right at the start of the book, she goes into the hotel room of one of their most expensive guests, Mr. Black, and finds him dead on his bed. So first, let's go ahead and get into the prose. So first, I will say that I felt a strong connection even just going into this book, because I used to be a maid in a hotel. It was a big, old, creepy one, kind of in the woods in the middle of nowhere, walking whenever I had night shift. It felt like The Shining. But anytime I'm reviewing a book, I like to find an interview with the author after I read it. And she said she came up with the idea for this book when she walked into her hotel room, and the maid kind of, she startled the maid a little bit, and the maid was folding, I think, her messy leggings that she had left on her bed. And it occurred to her how being a maid is such a very intimate job, but also an invisible position. And I will say that that description, just having been a maid, is spot on. It's incredibly intimate. A lot of things, as you can imagine, what you're doing, but your point is to be invisible and for the guests to forget you're there, which can often lead to them not treating you very well or like you're even a human being. So I thought that piece, and I liked the intention behind that part of the book. I can also see, similar to The Push, although this is widely different, the writing styles are not the same at all, I can also see why this book is going to become so popular, and really already is. I really think anyone could pick up and really fly through this book. Whether or not you're gonna love it, is one thing or the other, and I'll talk about that when I get to the cons. But for example, I'm not surprised that this has actually already been picked up to be a movie, and Florence Pugh is going to play Molly, who you all, I mean, who doesn't love Florence Pugh? So that's very exciting. All the characters are very entertaining, and I think in a weird way, and I don't want to shift into cons yet, but I could see how I might enjoy this as a movie more than I enjoyed it as a book. But I did enjoy the characters for the most part. I did adore Molly. And again, with that interview I was reading with the author, she said that she used to, and I'm just using, you know, her language, she said that she used to be a teacher for children with special needs. And she saw how when she would take them out of the classroom, you know, on trips, she would see how unfortunately they were treated by others, when in reality they were these incredibly intelligent, strong people. And that was also a little bit of her intention behind writing Molly, and I could feel a lot of the kind of the heart behind that. With that being said, though, Gran, Molly's grandmother, was easily my favorite character, and I loved their conversation so much. And that is everything I have to say about the pros. Let's go ahead and shift into the cons, because I do have some. So the main con for me, at least, I don't know if you describe this as a cozy mystery. You all can let me know. I'm not a big cozy mystery person, although I did feel some coziness with the hotel, but I don't know. But I will just say, maybe this is common for that type of book, but I was not whatsoever interested in this murder. I felt zero intrigue. And yes, the author, I'm sure, doesn't want you to even like Mr. Black, so you're not supposed to care that he's dead. But I will just say I was not interested in watching the mystery unfolds. So I was bored for a lot of this book. I'm going to be honest with you. I was much more interested. I would have rather read 300 pages of Molly just hanging out with her gran and having conversations than learning about the mystery behind this murder. I did not care. That there's a courtroom scene at the end of the book, and without giving too much away, just the way it was sort of done in terms of the timeline, I also felt no sense of tension with that either. So again, even though I don't have a lot of cons about this book, that was a pretty big one for me. And I will be honest, I'm just a little bit surprised about how much hype that this book is getting, because yes, Molly is a unique protagonist, but other than that, I didn't really feel anything super special about this book, and I feel terrible saying that. Again, there were a few pieces that I really loved, but this is by no means a favorite for me. I also want to talk a little bit about, and I want to be really clear up front, I am not an expert in this area, and I would love to hear your opinions. I'm sure many of you are more familiar with the topic than me, but I was seeing some discussion online about how, in an interview, the author describes Molly as socially awkward and unique, but the language of, say, neurotypical or neurodivergent or autism spectrum disorder, and I understand all of those are not the same thing, of course, but some people were saying that they took issue with the fact that if you're going to have representation, why not just explicitly say that in some point in the books or in interviews, when the only time those terms are even being brought up or when people are reviewing the book. But then others have been still saying this is good representation to have, even if it's not explicit, and that they could understand the author maybe taking a little bit of issue or being uncomfortable with diagnosing the character. So I could definitely understand both sides. Again, I think it's an interesting conversation to have. It's not one I'm super versed in, but I would love to hear all of your take for maybe who have read the book so far. So with all of that being said, and again, what I just said was not a pro or a con, it was a little bit separate, but with all of that being said, I'm going to rate The Maid 3 out of 5 creepy candles. Again, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you've read The Push or The Maid, please let me know your thoughts down below. I am going to film the favorite graphics novel video. I haven't forgotten about that, but I just wanted to get this up before, the thoughts of the books were fresh in my mind. But again, hope you all are doing well and staying safe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.